My brothers and sisters, what is going on? Steel Sermon in the house. Thursday evening with another video. As always, do me a favor. Like, comment, subscribe, follow on Instagram. Link in the description below. Donnie Franco in this one. Just came in after almost 7 months of waiting. Don't ever order from UPS, I can tell you that right now. But anyway, getting on to this video. Going to be talking about a little bit of a cornerback comparison and my cornerback thoughts on what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be for 2023. And it really boils down, in my opinion, to the savvy veteran who's been in the league versus the young buck who we took in the draft, fittingly, at number 32. And this ain't no coincidence, man. It ain't no coincidence that I'm putting it out now. But anyway, let's talk about Joey Porter Jr. and Patrick Peterson in this video. So the Steelers' pass defense in general last season, you take a look at it, and in a nutshell, it was very inconsistent against wide receivers. There were times where it really stood out, like in the Dolphins game, it really stood out against Tyreek Hill when we were locking down, or against the number one options, I should say, not against wide receivers in general, the number one options. Like when we limited Tyreek Hill and when we limited Devontae Adams in that Raider game on Christmas Eve. And then there are times where they got absolutely annihilated, like in the Philly and Buffalo game, by A.J. Brown and Gabriel Davis, respectively. So it's very clear that this defense is very up and down. And statistically, the defense allowed over 200 yards passing on offense the entire first half of last season. But in the second half of last season, the Steelers only had one game where they allowed over 200 yards passing, and that was the second Bengal game where they went off on us in that 37-30 game. And it comes down, you can chop it down to Terrell Austin's scheme or the lack of experience or stuff like Ahkello Witherspoon being a total bum, which he is. Levi Wallace not really living up to 100% full potential as well. Whatever you want to chop it down to, the fact of the matter is Pittsburgh's pass defense has always worked in such a way to where we handle the top receivers, and that comes down to packages, confusing the quarterback to letting them, beat us with throwing to their second, third, even fourth, fifth, even sixth options. And that's always been Terrell Austin's scheme. Confusing the quarterback, forcing bad passes, forcing interceptions. That was obvious in week 1 against the Bengals where we had all those interceptions on Joe Burrow. But you see, eventually, if you don't mix up your scheme, teams are going to catch on to that. And that's why the Bengals almost beat us week 1. And it also comes down to how well they communicate. Like when they're doubling and, like when they know how to double, when they know who to double, and how they take away from that top option. Basically, not letting the number one guy be the main playmaker is what this pass defense is all about. But you also have to figure in that when you're getting roasted by their second, third, and fourth options, the status quo of what your corner situation is going to be. That led to a lot of miscommunication and just getting beat in general. So with all that being said, we can start to talk about the comparison between Joey Porter Jr. and Patrick Peterson. Now, let's go back to Cam Sutton a little bit, one of our biggest losses this offseason. Statistic-wise, Cam Sutton was better in coverage than anyone else on the team last year because he knew where everyone was. He knew how to cover the majority of the players. But you had to take a look at the situation that Cam Sutton was in. That's where Patrick Peterson comes in. Patrick Peterson had 5 interceptions last year with the Minnesota Vikings, but he didn't have a premier safety like Minkah Fitzpatrick. Cam Sutton did. So you also have to think about the situation that Patrick Peterson is jumping into. He's now going to be working with one of the best safeties in the league. So you got to figure that quarterbacks are going to start targeting him or Minkah more. They're probably going to start targeting Patrick Peterson a little bit more due to the fact that he is, the savvy veteran that he is. But see, Patrick Peterson, despite his age, he can still lead that spark. He still's got the movements to where he can still cover up a team's number one option. He can line up with guys in different spots. And this, again, falls under Terrell Austin's scheme where it comes to the confusions. Quarterbacks will be thinking we're playing cover 2 when we're really playing cover 1. They think we're playing cover 1, we're really playing zone defense. We're playing man defense, we're playing zone defense when they're really thinking that we're playing man, and vice versa. I think Patrick Peterson can really thrive with Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, and even Levi Wallace opposite of him, because now he's working with a defensive player of the year, a former defensive player of the year, I should say, like I said, one of the best safeties in the league, and now you got a guy, Levi Wallace, who's opposite of him, who had his moments last year. He came up with a couple of good plays, and I really don't know if I can chop that down to Levi Wallace just getting his feet wet with more playing time or just lack of experience, but the fact of the matter is, I think Patrick Peterson can really work with these guys. And, again, I'm not saying in general that the pass defense is bad, but that's where actually the offense comes in. The offense has a lot to do with it. The reason week 1 was as close as it was because not only did Joe Burrow start figuring out, hey, you know what, they're just trying to confuse me right here. But when your offense is consistently given an explosive offense like the Bengals, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, chance after chance after chance, that's going to allow the defense to get in prime position and to make the game closer and to crack the code a little bit more. So really the offense has a lot to do with it as well, which is where Joey Porter Jr. comes in. Obviously, we know we took this guy 32nd overall, first pick of the second day of the draft, thanks to the Chase Claypool trade to the Chicago Bears. And I really do think that Peezy Jr. is here to be what Ahkello Witherspoon was supposed to be, because you take a look at what Ahkello Witherspoon was doing. He was getting roasted. He was getting beat. I mean, it was just not even close with him. And the reason is that Ahkello Witherspoon, we signed him because he showed potential at the end of 2021 that he could have been our top corner, but he just, couldn't live up to it, needless to say that. So we needed to get that third corner because he was just becoming a non-factor. And I think that with getting Peezy Jr. here, he was drafted in the right situation and that he can handle his own. I think it's going to come down to him asking for communication in different spots, handling the adjustment, and answering the question if he can play at a first-round level. And all this boils down to flexibility, with the end-all be-all being the pass defense. How are the Steelers going to be able to confuse and communicate to do what we did in the second half of last season and translate it to the majority of this season. I'm not a big fan of Terrell Austin. I'm just going to say right here, not a big fan of him. But you got to remember that Terrell Austin was the secondary coach before he became the defensive coordinator, and that was his scheme, like I said at the beginning of this video. He was putting together disguises, he was putting together confusion for the quarterbacks, and the reason that a lot of that in the mid to late 2010s, like I'm talking about the Killer B days, you can chop it down to, yeah, we had a lot of aging players on defense. That's true too, but the reason is that we kept playing zone defense is that we just didn't have the man talent that Terrell Austin was accustomed to. The Killer B days were wasted a lot, mainly because of that. You got to have some kind of defense to win you a chip as well. You can have great offense. I mean, a great offense is certainly going to take you a long way, but without some kind of a defense, you ain't going anywhere. And that was the problem with Terrell Austin's scheme. He just didn't have the man talent. Now he does, and you see it because we're generating turnovers. And I think the olive branch for Terrell Austin's scheme was back in 2017 when we got Joe Hayden over here. Granted, Joe Hayden, he was kind of at the tail end of his career, but when he came over here, he was more successful with the Pittsburgh Steelers than he was with the Cleveland Browns for over a decade. Or almost a decade, I should say. Thinking of Joe Thomas, I'm sorry. But you get the point. These are two really good bolsters to the pass defense that we have that led the league in turnovers, I should mention, that know how to pick up turnovers and that know how to hold their own against top-tier wide receivers. It just comes down to execution, and it comes down to communication, flexibility, and who's going to be doing what where. I think you put Patrick Peterson in different spots, and he's going to be, playing behind. He's going to be playing in front of Minkah Fitzpatrick, and you put Peezy Jr. You don't expect him to be a top corner right out of the gate, and he just let him marinate and develop, and you ask him to play in different spots and just handle the adjustment. I think Peezy Jr. is going to be just fine. So let me know what yinz think down in the comments below. Which do you think is the better pickup overall when it comes to the corner for the Steelers? Peezy Jr. or Peterson? Let me know what yinz think. This is Steel Sermon checking on out for the night. May God be with you all.